Okay, so Palantir, PLTR on the stock market. You've been seeing it everywhere, right? AI, space, even fighting human trafficking.
It really does seem like they're everywhere these days.
And the stock's been surging, making headlines left and right, but is it all hype or is there something really big happening? It's kind of hard to tell sometimes. That's why we're doing this deep dive today to try and figure it all out.
Yeah, we'll cut through the noise, get to what really matters.
We've got financial data, we've got news, even some opinions from those passionate folks over on TradingView. You know how they get. By the time we're done, you'll have a much clearer picture of PLTR beyond just the headlines, the substance.
You'll be able to spot the real opportunities and, of course, the potential pitfalls. Got to watch out for those too.
Absolutely. So the first thing that really jumped out at me, PLTR's stock jumped like over 8% in just one day.
Oh yeah, that was a big one.
Just because it got added to the NASDAQ 100 index. That's crazy, right? So is that all just like a psychological thing, or what's really going on there?
Well, there's definitely a psychological component to it, right?
Huh.
Kind of like a seal of approval.
Right, like they've made it to the big leagues.
Exactly. So investors see it as a sign of legitimacy that boosts confidence, but it's not just about feelings. There's also a more mechanical aspect to it. When a company gets added to the NASDAQ 100, it automatically becomes part of a ton of these index funds and ETFs.
Oh, right, the ones that track that index.
Exactly. And those funds, they have to buy shares of the new company.
Yeah.
So you have this sudden surge in demand, and, well, that pushes the price up.
So it's almost like a forced buying spree?
In a way, yeah, you could say that. And it's not just like small-time investors either. We're talking big institutions, the pension funds, mutual funds, all those guys. They're all in on this action.
Wow, so everyone's piling in.
Yeah. And just to give you an example, the New York State Teachers Retirement System, they bought a whopping 1.5 million shares of PLTR just last quarter.
The teachers are betting on Palantir. That's kind of wild.
It is, right? You think of those groups as being pretty conservative, playing it safe, thinking long-term. So their involvement definitely makes you wonder, do they see something in PLTR that maybe the rest of us are missing? Is there a real opportunity here that they're sensing?
It definitely makes you think, okay, so we've got this NASDAQ bump, we've got these big institutions getting on board, but then there's this other piece of the puzzle that I'm finding kind of confusing. PLTR's stock has gone through the roof in 2024, like over 117% growth in just 9 months.
Oh, it's been on a tear, that's for sure.
But their forward price to sales ratio is like almost 40? Can you help break this down for us? What does that ratio actually tell us? Does this mean that PLTR is like this rocket ship about to blast off, or are we looking at a classic tech bubble situation?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The price-to-sales ratio, or PS ratio as it's often called, basically compares a company's market value, what it's worth on the stock market, to its actual revenue, how much money it's bringing in from sales.
Okay, so it's like, how much are investors willing to pay for every dollar of sales the company makes?
Exactly. And a high PS ratio, like what we're seeing with PLTR, often suggests that investors have really, really high hopes for the company's future growth.
They're betting that PLTR is going to bring in a whole lot more sales down the line, enough to justify that crazy high price.
Exactly. But to understand if that bet makes sense, we have to look at PLTR's business specifically. Now, they're in the AI game, which, as you know, is absolutely booming right now. They're also locking in these big contracts, especially with the U.S. government. So that kind of rapid growth, if it keeps up, could make some investors think that, hey, maybe that premium valuation is totally reasonable.
Okay, so the growth potential is definitely there, but growth isn't everything, right? There's always risk involved, especially in the tech world.
Oh, absolutely. High growth doesn't guarantee that a company's going to be profitable in the long run. And plus, the market can be really fickle, sentiment can change on a dime. So the PS ratio, it's a useful starting point, but it's super important to dig deeper, look at their financials, their competition, and maybe most importantly, their long-term strategy.
Makes sense. Let's do that then. PLTR's Q2 2024 business update seems like a good place to start. Revenue growth was a pretty hefty 27% year over year, and even better, 30% if you exclude some specific contracts. And get this, they've been GAAP profitable for 7 straight quarters now.
Wow, that is impressive.
I know GAAP might sound a little jargony, but basically it means they're making money, according to the generally accepted accounting
A
principle.
gold standard, if you will.
Exactly. So what jumps out at you from these numbers?
Well, to me, the consistent profitability really stands out. A lot of tech companies, especially in these cutting-edge fields, they really struggle to turn a profit for a long, long time.
Right, because they're pouring so much money into R&D, trying to grab market share, all that.
Exactly. So for PLTR to be consistently profitable while they're still investing heavily in growth, that's a big deal. Suggests they're running a tight ship, being strategic with their resources.
They're not just, like, burning through cash to chase the hype.
Right. It seems like there's some real substance behind all this growth.
Yeah, they're not just throwing money around hoping for the best, it seems like.
Right. And so they've found this good balance between, like innovating and pushing forward, but also being smart with their money.
Definitely financial discipline is important,
Huh.
especially in such a fast-moving field.
Totally. Okay, so we've established that they're growing, making money, but what about the core of their business? Let's talk about their artificial intelligence platform, their AIP,
Right, the heart of it all.
which they claim goes, beyond chat, which
Mm.
is an interesting claim because everyone and their mother is talking about AI these days.
Is the buzzword of the year, for sure.
But PLTR seems very focused on real-world applications, which I think is refreshing to see. Oh, definitely. I agree that focus on practical use cases, that could be what really sets them apart in this whole, crowded AI space.
Right, because there are so many companies jumping on that bandwagon.
Exactly. And those case studies they highlight in their business update, they're pretty compelling. They've picked some good words.
Those were really interesting, like Tampa General Hospital using AIP to cut patient length of stay by 30%. I mean, that's potentially saving lives right there.
Huge impact.
Yeah.
And not just theoretical either.
Yeah, and Polaris using AIP to combat human trafficking by, analyzing data in real time. That's powerful stuff.
Yeah, it really shows you the potential of this platform to tackle these big, complex, real-world problems. And if they can keep showcasing these success stories, it gives them a real edge, I think.
It's like proof that it actually works,
Right, not just talk.
Exactly, and it's not just about developing the tech either. They're also really focused on making it easier for companies to actually use it, putting it into practice.
That's a really smart move, making that adoption process smoother, especially for
Yep.
something as complex as AI,
Yeah, it can seem daunting for a lot of companies.
Definitely.
Yeah.
They might be hesitant to invest if they think, oh, this is going to be a nightmare to implement.
Totally. And remember that anecdote they shared about that wholesale insurance brokerage firm?
Oh, yeah. That was good.
Went from an initial boot camp to a 7-figure, 2-year deal in just 16 days.
Let's talk about a quick turnaround.
It's amazing, right? And it just shows how they've streamlined that process of getting companies up and running with AIP.
Yeah, it's like they're proving not just the value of the tech, but also like, hey, it's actually feasible to do this. You can implement this without a huge headache.
Right, it's like they're bridging this gap between all the excitement around AI and then the reality of actually using it.
Exactly. And building that bridge is super crucial for their long-term success. I think convincing businesses that, hey, AIP isn't just this flashy new toy. It's a valuable tool that can actually drive real results.
And that's what businesses care about at the end of the day.
The bottom line, for sure. Okay, so speaking of results, let's not forget about their bread and butter, their government contracts.
Ah, yes, steady hand.
The U.S. government business remained strong in Q2, 24% year-over-year revenue growth.
Wow. And they got that new $480 million contract with the Department of Defense to scale up their AI capabilities.
That's a big win.
It is, but of course, relying so heavily on government contracts has its own risks, right?
Oh, for sure. You always have to consider that government spending, it can be really unpredictable.
Mm.
It shifts with changing priorities, political winds, all sorts of things.
So like a new administration comes in, changes their defense strategy, and boom, that could impact PLTR, even if their tech is amazing.
Exactly. That's the risk you run when you're so dependent on one main source of revenue.
So it's about diversification, then spreading the risk a little bit.
Absolutely. Companies like PLTR, they need to be thinking about that, how to make themselves less vulnerable to those shifts in government spending.
Right, okay, so let's step outside of PLTR's own reports for a bit and see what the chatter is out there. What are people saying?
Get the word on the street.
Exactly. We've got some interesting insights from TradingView, and as usual, it's a mixed bag. Some traders are incredibly bullish on PLTR's long-term potential.
Especially with this whole AI push. I mean, that's where a lot of the excitement is.
Right, they see them as like this potential game changer in the AI space.
They point to the technology, the growing client base, and of course, those strong government ties as indicators that they're going to be successful.
But then there are others who are much more cautious, even calling PLTR a bubble in the making. I saw that phrase a few times.
And, their concerns aren't totally unfounded. They're questioning whether PLTR can really justify that sky-high valuation, especially given how competitive the AI market is.
It's getting pretty crowded in there.
Yeah, and there's still that uncertainty around the government contracts like we talked about.
Right. How long will that gravy train last?
Exactly. I even saw one trader predicting a 40% drop in their stock price after their next earnings report.
Ouch, that's a bold prediction.
It is, and it's a good reminder that, these individual opinions on TradingView or any platform, really, you got to take them with a grain of salt.
Totally. It's so easy to get caught up in the hype or the doom and gloom. But you have to do your own research, look at the facts, and draw your own conclusions.
Exactly. Those opinions can be a good starting point. They can spark further investigation, but don't base your entire investment strategy on one person's prediction.
Right. It's about thinking for yourself, using your own judgment.
Cultivating that critical thinking muscle, especially in an environment like TradingView where emotions can run high.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And let's be real, those strong opinions, all that colorful language, it makes those threads so entertaining to read, even if you're not actively trading PLTR.
It's like reality TV for the stock market.
Exactly. But as I was reading through those discussions, I noticed something interesting. There wasn't much talk at all about the actual real-world impact of PLTR's work.
That's a good point.
Okay.
I mean, we're talking about AI being used to potentially save lives, disrupt criminal networks, manage these incredibly complex systems in healthcare space exploration. It's huge.
Right. It feels like a much bigger conversation than just whether PLTR is going to hit a certain stock price.
It is. It really is. And it highlights something I've noticed a lot in the financial markets, this disconnect between a company's financial performance and the actual impact of their products or services.
Yeah, it's easy to get fixated on the numbers, the charts, how much money you might make or lose.
But we have to remember there are real people and real consequences behind those numbers.
Exactly. And in PLTR's case, those consequences could be pretty significant. I mean, we're talking about AI being used in defense intelligence, healthcare, even space exploration. These are areas that have huge implications for society as a whole.
Oh, absolutely. It goes way beyond just the financial markets.
So yes, it's valuable to analyze PLTR's financials, understand their growth strategy, see if their stock is a good investment. But we also need to be having this broader conversation about the role of AI in society, the potential benefits, the potential risks, all of it.
I completely agree. The conversation needs to involve everyone, technologists, policymakers, and yes, even investors. We all have a stake in this. And companies like PLTR, they're right at the forefront.
It really does. And it all comes down to this, right? You've got all this information about PLTR. Now, what do you do with it?
That's the question. Isn't it time to make some decisions?
So if you were an investor, looking at PLTR right now, what would you want to dig into further before you decide, hey, do I buy this stock? Do I sell it? Do I just sit tight?
Yeah, what are those key questions?
Exactly.
Well, if I were looking at PLTR, I'd be really interested in digging deeper into their competitive landscape.
Yeah.
Who else is out there? Exactly how strong is their position in the AI market, really?
Yeah.
Are there other companies nipping at their heels, developing similar solutions that could, potentially eat into their market share?
It's easy to get tunnel vision when you're focused on one company. You forget that there's this whole ecosystem out there.
Right. You got to zoom out a little bit.
For sure. And for me, another big question would be, we talked about those government contracts and the potential risks there. So I'd want to see how they're planning to diversify their revenue streams, Are they making any inroads into the commercial sector? What's their strategy for attracting new clients outside of government agencies?
Yeah, because those government contracts can be so fickle.
Exactly. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, especially when that basket is, tied to the whims of government spending.
Right. And of course, no deep dive into PLTR would be complete without really getting into the nitty-gritty of their financials.
Oh, yeah. Got to look under the hood.
Exactly. We talked about their profitability, which is impressive. But I'd want to go beyond the headlines. Really scrutinize their balance sheet, their cash flow, their debt levels, all those things that can give you a clearer picture of their financial health.
Right. Are there any red flags hiding in there?
Exactly. So it's not just about revenue growth. It's about understanding the whole financial picture. Are they managing their money? Or are they making smart investments? Those are key questions for any investor.
Yeah, you want to make sure they're being responsible stewards of your money, right?
Absolutely. And I think it's also worth taking a step back and considering those broader market trends. AI is hot right now, but will it stay that way? Are there any potential disruptions on the horizon that could impact PLTR's business? Things change so quickly in the tech world.
It's like that saying, right past performance is not indicative of future results.
Exactly. You got to be forward-thinking, anticipate those potential challenges,
Yeah.
and assess whether a company is well equipped to deal with them.
It's all about adapting and evolving.
For sure. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground here today.
We have a lot to digest.
Definitely. But hopefully this deep dive has given you plenty to think about when it comes to PLTR. We've looked at their stock performance, their AI technology, those government contracts, the opinions swirling around them. We've tried to give you that well-rounded view.
Show you the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Exactly. Highlight both the opportunities and the risks.
But remember, this is just the starting point.
Yeah.
It's up to you now to continue the exploration, do your own research, ask your own questions, and ultimately make your own decisions.
Investing, it's a journey, not a destination.
Well said. The more you learn, the better equipped you'll be to make those informed decisions.
Exactly. Knowledge is power.
So keep learning, keep questioning, and most importantly, keep diving deep. We'll be back soon with another fascinating topic to explore. Until then, happy investing.